Are you a passionate first-year teacher that wants to do a phenomenal job your first year, but you're not exactly sure where to start? If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to my channel where I share weekly insights, support, tips, strategies, and some candid advice about teaching social studies. If you're new to this channel, hi, I'm Cecilia Tames, and I'm an experienced educator and consultant. And I provide resources, support, and solutions for passionate history teachers like you. Now, in order to be a successful first-year teacher, the very first thing that you need to make sure that you have pat down and master is your classroom management. Now, if you've had any type of teacher training, you've probably heard it 1,000 times over, but as a veteran educator, I can tell you from experience that nothing, and I mean nothing in your classroom will work if you do not have an effective and efficient classroom management system. I have tried both a consequence-based classroom and I have tried an incentive-based classroom, and I can tell you that incentive-based classrooms are the way to go. Because the fact of the matter is, if your students feel loved and respected in your classroom, your students will move mountains for you. Versus if you are trying to basically scare them into being compliant, I mean, they can read that a mile away and they will see you as a manipulative person who does not have their best interests in mind. Now, one thing that's often overlooked that I've seen in my experience is that particularly newer teachers to the field, they hear classroom management and right away they might think of discipline, they might think of behavior. But the truth is, classroom management encompasses the actual management of the classroom in its totality. I'm talking about time and behavior and procedural and structures. So basically, it is a management of the system of your classroom. So before starting the school year, you really need to ask yourself, okay, do I have a procedure for how I want things done? Not just what you need done in your class, but also how. Because I can tell you that if you do not tell your students how you want a certain thing done, particularly the younger the grade level, the more specific you need to be about how you want something done. Otherwise, they're going to come up with their own creative ways to comply with what you told them, and it might not be the way that you expect, or they'll come up with their own creative ways to pass time while they figure out what you actually want them to do and how you want them to do it. Now, the secret to making your classroom management systems work is knowing your students and making them feel loved, respected, and appreciated as human beings. So I can't emphasize enough the importance of establishing a relationship with your class and thinking of getting to know your students as an investment in your classroom management systems, because that's going to set the tone for how students will interact with you, how they're going to interact with their peers, and honestly, that will ultimately affect your efficacy as an instructor. If your management system is malfunctioning, if there is no relationship with your audience, with your students, it doesn't matter how brilliant your lesson is, it's gonna flop. The second thing you need to know to be a successful first-year teacher is your curriculum. That means that you need to know what you're teaching, how you're teaching it, how in-depth to teach a topic, and how much time to spend on a topic. Now, this means that the first thing you need to do when you get your teaching job is look up your state and your grade level curriculum. And also, I would inquire with my district if they had some sort of curriculum already set up, maybe a textbook that I could start taking a look at. Now, I have to be honest with you, I feel like one of the most challenging things when I started teaching is getting the gist of actually how to do what I was hired to do, which was teach. And I can tell you that I easily spent the first 4 years of my career trying to figure everything out. And namely, that was because one, we didn't have a set curriculum at my school district, and two, you know, for all the new teacher trainings you receive and all the professional development you have to attend, no one really shows you how to construct a lesson using the curriculum and really investing the time in getting you to understand, especially as a novice teacher, what it is that you're doing and how to piece everything together. That was very intimidating for me, and that was very stressful to me because the assumption is if you are certified as a teacher, then you'll figure it out or you know how to do it. Okay, I know this is a little bizarre, but I'm actually interrupting my own video. But if you're feeling anything like I did, I know how intimidating it could be to want to prepare to do a phenomenal job in your class. If you're feeling apprehensive about the start of the next school year, I cordially invite you to check out my link, Teach Like an Influencer, down below, and check out Teach Like an Influencer Academy, where I offer courses to brand new social studies teachers that really want to get ahead of the game and learn how to teach their class like a pro. Now, obviously, as a first year teacher, of course, I wanted to show up and be prepared for my job, but the problem was I didn't really know how to prepare for my job. And so that start of that school year was just really chaotic for me in the sense that I was trying to figure out the curriculum. So I was trying to figure out what I needed to teach, how I needed to teach it, plus I was trying to figure out what manipulatives I needed to make in order to teach that lesson. So I highly advise that the sooner you can access materials, state standards, curriculum, the better. Now, the third thing that you need to do in order to be a successful first-year teacher is have self-discipline and self-control. And I'm going to say this slowly because it's so important. You cannot manage, discipline, influence another person's behavior and reactions if you cannot manage your own. If you haven't mastered the ability to master and discipline yourself, you are going to find it quite challenging to establish a system and to keep consistency and to keep efficiency in your classroom regularly. So this means you need to get into the practice of de-escalating yourself when you get triggered. This means you want to get into the habit of keeping commitments and being consistent. If you can do that with yourself, then you can do that and model that for your students and your class. The more emotional intelligence you can develop for yourself, the more insight you'll have when your students react a certain way, respond a certain way, because then you'll know it's not necessarily them personally all the time. It is an underlying factor or emotion that they don't have the emotional intelligence necessarily to express in a different way, in a more calm way. You also want to think about, and you need to reflect upon your own biases as an educator. Given all the events that have transpired in the last couple years, it's more important than ever that we adopt this practice consistently, because we have to remember we are teaching an extremely impressionable little group of human beings. And that means that everything you do and everything you say could truly affect your students for a lifetime. Because if you are a person of authority in their life that they trust and that they respect your opinions of them, that's going to shape their identity. And I feel like sometimes we're so consumed with teaching the content and teaching our classes that we forget the level of influence that we have over our students. Because if we say that we care about students and we have their best interests in mind, then you will invest the time to reflect on your bias and see how you can better serve your class. Okay, so before you get your knickers in a twist, I also want to remind you that even as a new teacher, you already come with a lot of strengths that'll help you navigate your first year teaching. However, I'm curious to know which of these topics makes you most nervous as a new teacher. So comment below and let me know. And remember not to be too hard on yourself for what you don't know yet. Teaching is a learning process in itself. The fourth thing that you need to master in order to be a successful first-year teacher is time management. So the two facets of this are going to be personal time management and classroom time management. And you want to make sure that you're able to master both. Now, when it comes to personal time management, I mentioned earlier, we really cannot model, influence, and inspire our students to have good time management practices if we have not mastered that ourselves. So I have to be upfront with you in teaching, like there's always something to worry about. There's always something to do. You are never not going to be busy. I have this other belief, actually inspired by math, that I call order of operations. And that just means this: if it has no physical, tangible due date, don't worry about it yet. Instead, what I recommend you do is reflect on some of the constants in your schedule. Anything that is a consistent and has a physical, tangible due date, that's what you want to prepare for and work towards. Everything else, you want to pick maybe 3 top things that you have to get done for that day. And honestly, call that a win. Because if you try the mile-long sticky note, chances are you are going to feel overwhelmed, you're going to freeze up, and you're going to self-sabotage by keeping yourself busy doing things that aren't really moving the needle for you, instead of truly investing the time in things that you do actually need to prepare for and get done. Now, you want to be really careful with this, because the more things you assign yourself to do, the more hazy your judgment will become about what is truly a priority for you. And this is also true for your students. The more you assign them, the less understanding they have about what you want done first, what is more urgent, and what they need to prioritize. Now, when it comes to student time management, there are 3 main important things you need to know, and that's basically your class schedule, your scope and sequence, what do your students need to know and by when, and also don't forget, the timer is your friend. You want to make sure that you do time everything so that your students get into the habit of using their time effectively, since they know that you don't have all period to do one thing. Finally, the 5th thing that you need to do in order to be a successful first-year teacher is understand self-care. Okay, so unpopular opinion check, but from a veteran educator who cares about your success, I gotta tell you, we need to get the spa bubble bath mentality out of our head for a hot minute. In teaching, self-care is 2 things, and that is honoring yourself as a human being and keeping promises to yourself. In education, self-care is consistent reflection on what is absolutely essential. It also means making your peace with having to wing it on some days. Self-care for educators is learning how to be okay with saying no sometimes. And not only that, it's also honoring your physical, your mental, your emotional needs. I know that our first year teaching, we are so invested and enthusiastic about helping students that we are pretty much down to do anything that it takes in order to prove that we really do care about our students. But I'm going to tell you this from a place of love and a place of respect. Sometimes the best thing we can do for our students is say no, to take care of ourselves, our physical, our emotional well-being, so that we can actually show up the next day during class with the energy and the enthusiasm that our students deserve and expect of us. So I want you to think that self-care and wellness, the form of showing your students that you care about them. If you're a student teacher, or perhaps you're a new educator who is actively pursuing a new job, I highly advise that you check out my teacher interview simulation, and I'll go ahead and link that video down below so that you can practice as many times as you need before your next interview so you can land that job. If you found this content helpful and would like personalized support to help get you started this academic school year, make sure you click Teach Like an Influencer at the link below for personalized support and solutions, or consider joining my newsletter for additional tips, information, and strategies for teaching social studies without the burnout. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe. Until next time, class dismissed.